and about that post that says between the trigger and the response there is space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Just to explain a little bit more, and that refers to what we call the 5 khandhas in Buddhism teaching, which I mentioned in other places. And the 5 khandhas are those 5 steps or stages of the chain reaction of what makes sentient beings, which is the contact, perception, reaction, and then the cycle goes on. And it's the basic Pavlovian nature of most sentient beings and most humans, which is to get triggered by what we call contact between an outside object and the sense door, or a thought, an emotion in the mind. And basically what makes the being sentient is that nervous system that carries that little signal to the brain, and then the whole mess starts with that mind interpreting things, perceiving a certain way, and having a reaction. As I've written before, just again to make you feel a bit more humble, that's the only difference between you and organic matter without nervous system, and inanimate things, of course, minerals. It's just that you are a thing that thinks too much, obviously, as a human most of the time, and you have a nervous system that carries information. And again, science just looks at it that way and they think there's nothing about it. Well, that's the way they know how to control people a lot now and how to torture people, right? The whole basic notion of suffering goes with that, exactly those 5 khandhas, chain reaction. Because you have no control of your mind, no control of your emotion and reactions from the perception in between. So everything works, as we say, as instant, right? It's instant reflex, instant reaction mode, which shows when people don't have any control at all, and that's the majority. So that's one thing I discovered, one of my earlier discovery at school, back then in high school. I realized that, and actually I managed to apply that in life, and that's where I had one of my first really extraordinary experiences, which is that experience which we know and can define also as the transition between the 4th jhana and the 5th jhana, which are the called like level of absorption, which means a deeper level of concentration. And the transition of that is what also we call between the rupa and arupa, which means the physical world and the non-physical world anymore, only in the mind. And that's basically that moment, in one way you could say, where you leave the body as far as feelings and sensations, and there's only the mind left, as I mentioned before. So that's where anything can be done to your body and you don't feel anything anymore, and you don't have a reaction or a response to that, which shows and confirms only for those people who have reached that level that you can control that, and you basically can transcend that instant reaction mode, which in physiological science is known as response to stimulus through the nervous system, as far again as what makes us sentient beings. And I realized at the time That's what it is, simply that our emotion reaction are just the response to a psychosensorial stimulus. And again, that's just what it is in physiology. There is contact, any contact triggers a sensation. That sensation sends a little signal, a nervous signal to the brain. And then there's first a perception with interpretation, good or bad most of the time. Again, we are very binary, right? It's just basically that. Just our DNA is binary, binding of those genes and letters, right? And the same as we made computer the same way. The computer language coding is a binary system. It's altogether the same. Whether you call it a thing as a computer, not the computer that start to think as they want to mean by AI, which again start to make a bit of the circle around and mean that some supposed big tech like Musk and blah blah start to think that we might be in the Matrix, the computer simulation. We might be in a simulation. We might be a video game of some higher beings that have created us like that. So in one way you can think in that direction, but still the problem is that we are still responsible for what we are that way, except that mostly people are unconsciously responsible with no control of their mind and the consequences of what they do and the action. So anyway, you again are just what I used to call at the time people being victim of themselves is exactly that. That there are those laws of natures and the physiology like that, but people have no control. Again, many people like to think that they are in charge of themselves, that they can think for themselves, supposedly, that they can make choices and decisions, yet you are constantly triggered millions of times through your senses. Your sense doors are receiving and reacting to any stimulus from the outside world or in your mind and with thoughts and emotions. But when you go deeper and in meditation, in concentration, then you will realize that there are those steps. And if you go deep enough with proper concentration, you will manage to dissociate those steps. And as I mentioned before, then you will see where is the link. It's exactly the switch. Again, physical switch. And I remember thinking of that at the time when I was a teenager. And that's why for me it was never a problem to change too, in one way. When people always like to use the excuse of that change takes time or whatever, it's just the big ego that always has a problem with change, which is the only reality of existence. Constant change, everything temporary, everything ephemeral. Anicca, everything is constantly changing. But the ego doesn't like to change. The ego likes to believe in his identity as a solid being, that the you during your life and blah, blah, blah. But actually, you can switch very quick, and you can switch and everything changes in your minds in a split of a second if you want to trigger that switch. So, during the chain reaction, through those 5 steps, there is one spot that is kind of a switch, and that's exactly between the message being sent, which is pure physics, pure physiology like physics, and if your mind basically responds, if you get triggered. And that is actually where you have the choice. Like it says, the power to choose. But of course, for most, like animals don't have this capacity. That's the difference between humans and animals, and that's why animals are in a different realm of existence and a lower realm of existence, because they don't have that capacity to reflect, self-reflect, and concentrate on that. But humans have it, and that's what allows humans to reach enlightenment. exactly through that process. So if you can really concentrate deep enough, you will really dissociate clearly those 5 steps. Then you will see where the trigger is, the switch, the one that is the reaction. And there you can practice what we call always equanimity, upekkha. That's why upekkha is the key. Upekkha is the key to enlightenment. Upekkha is what will get you all the way through to reach enlightenment, which is the non-reaction mode to anything that happens, anything that you witness, that you experience, that you see, that you whatever. Just having equanimity, meaning non-reaction mode, only observing. Then you become a true scientist, and that's the way we explain it too, like that. You have to become a true scientist of yourself during the practice, which means you observe like you are detached emotionally from what you observe within yourself, and not being triggered, not reacting at all, but only observe objectively, which means observe that reality of what it is for what it is. That's all. That's called awareness, pure awareness, the proper awareness. That's why awareness and equanimity are the real factors that will lead you to the end, to the goal, to enlightenment, which is to dissociate and transcend from mind and matter, the matter, the physical part, and then the mind, which is subtler. So that is the point, to not react, to just see that, to witness that moment, that step, where it will be you conditioned being to react and respond to that stimulus when it reaches. And then you can see that. And that's why basically, unfortunately, that's probably an example that many people don't like, but I like to use it because it's very clear. When somebody torture you, most people, again, back to also the previous video about fear, that's how people have so much power, because they can torture people easily, both mentally and physically. It's because they threaten you, and they threaten you to make you suffer physically, and because you are a basic human with no capacity to dissociate that, you will suffer physically because you will be in constant reaction mode to the physical stimulus that they give you, and also they can threaten you with death, right, at the end, or you will die in extreme suffering. Then you also freak out mentally, emotionally, right? Again, you get triggered emotionally. But then we have some situations that were known. Unfortunately, for example, typically the Chinese army is known, of course, to be very good at. The Chinese are very good at torture, and of course, after invading Tibet, we know that there has been all of that. The sadistic side of those basic soldiers, capturing the Tibetan monks and saying, "Oh, you're a Buddhist monk, right? You're supposed to be able to detach, blah, blah, blah," and then they torture them and all the bad things. But then there are some situations that are known, where they try to torture some advanced monks, and they did the most unimaginable kind of things, yet the monk had still a peaceful face expression and no reaction at all. Exactly that, to confirm, both physically and mentally, you can detach, you can switch off that switch, that one part in the 5 khandhas. So there will be just a basic physical thing. So you can try to be such a scientist towards yourself, no matter how much physical pain you have. If you know that it's only pain, again, that's another thing that I like to explain to people. There's a huge difference between the notion of pain and injury. Pain is mental. Pain is exactly that mental suffering, the mind getting triggered and not to know how to control, and instant response But injury is physical. I mean, it's real. Like you injure your body, you injure your body. So the point is that if you are in a position quite comfortable, as usual for meditation, especially on cushions, you're not going to injure yourself for most of the people by still sitting comfortably on a cushion. But yes, you will have the discomfort or deep discomfort, but it's still just pain because you are not used to it. And as usual, as a usual human, you have been your whole life getting used to comfort and convenience, right? And seeking it all the time, always, which is why you become a very fragile little thing with not much control of the mind. As soon as things don't go the way we want, which is exactly what is a definition of suffering, then you will get triggered because you are too used to comfort. But to get used to discomfort and accept it again and practice equanimity on that and go to the source of what you call the pain and try to find its source, its center, is what will get you deeper in concentration, and again find that switch somewhere there in those 5 steps. So the basic thing is that physical part of object coming in contact with a sense, the sense though sends the reacting signal, physical reacting signal along the nerve system, goes to the brain, to the mind. Then there, it's either the mind is in typical instant reaction mode, completely conditioned as usual, or you are aware of that at that moment, and then you can control that, and then you can not react at once in a unconscious conditioned way. And that's exactly what this quote refers to as where your growth and your freedom lies. Because ultimately, one way to define enlightenment is also to call it the unconditioned, right? That's what enlightenment state is. Compared to the whole existence of anything which is conditioned, which is karma, everything is conditioned, then enlightenment is the unconditioned. We have transcended mind and body, so there's no more reaction to anything. You have cut that chain of 5 khandhas and what we call the sankharas, which are the reaction, the reaction that creates the next action. So there is true freedom. Again, people talking about freedom in everyday life, they have no clue of what true freedom is, because they're totally conditioned beings. They're conditioned by their own life and personality and karma. So, and they are exactly still totally in constant, instant reaction mode, triggered by anything, what they see, what they hear, what they taste, what they smell, what they feel physically, or their own thoughts and emotion. So, but that's what this whole thing means. You can choose at that time. And then after that, because you are still part of this world, if you are not a recluse, then you can choose wisely the appropriate response to the situation or to the personal trigger, if you think it's justified or it can help anything or anybody. But that's exactly how it works. But for most people, this doesn't really speak so much, in a sense that they cannot experience those stages within and dissociate them and see them as steps, 5 steps, 5 khandhas. But that's how it works. And so there is a possibility, there is that space as in between each steps, and there is the one that you can use as a switch and switch off or detach from that basic conditioned instant reaction mode that most people and sentient beings have, without any control, even without any awareness of that. Just thinking that's how it is. They want to call it instant because, of course, the nervous message, the nervous reaction, the nerve reaction and messages sent along the nerves happens, of course, billions and billions of times per second. But that's also something you can become aware of when you reach those deepest level of concentration. You are aware of those billions and billions of biochemical reactions per second. But that's also another thing. But there it is, about between the trigger and the response. You actually have the possibility and capacity to choose, and to choose not to be in conditioned, uncontrolled, instant reaction mode. And that's what has to do with a bit of wisdom. Then suddenly you can see the people who are not instantly triggered, which means they can be easily controlled and manipulated, which is what the system is using, of course, again, to control the population and the majority. And that's why it works, as we can see, because still people just follow the mass, the authorities, and they like to repeat and try to force others to just repeat and follow the same mindlessly. And that is the opposite of freedom, of course, and growth.